There was a time when Las Vegas was the city that never slept, a glittering oasis where the neon lights washed away every worry, and the dream of striking it rich drew millions from every corner of the globe. But if you look past that iconic glow today, you'll find a darker truth, a shadow that's impossible to ignore. Those colossal hotel towers, once bragging about record-breaking occupancy, now stand with entire floors shrouded in silence. The casino halls, which used to echo with the roar of victory and the symphony of slot machines, are now disturbingly quiet. Even the legendary buffets, once crammed with visitors ready to feast, are either shrinking away or closing their doors for good. But this collapse didn't just happen overnight. No, this has been a slow poison building for years, fueled by a toxic mix of corporate greed, catastrophic decisions, and a system that squeezed its visitors until they had no choice but to walk away. Hidden resort fees, outrageous parking charges, roulette tables designed to be unwinnable, and meals with jaw-dropping price tags. Every single choice was another crack in the foundation of trust. And while the casino bosses gambled on billion-dollar distractions like Formula One and the Sphere, they completely lost sight of the one thing that truly mattered. Vegas was built for the people, and people only come back if they feel like they have a chance to win. So now, with visitor numbers plummeting, hotel rooms sitting empty, workers being laid off, and families fleeing the valley, this city is facing a breaking point from which it may never recover. Economists have been sounding the alarm, warning that what's unfolding here isn't just a crisis for Vegas, it's a chilling warning for America itself. The question is no longer about whether Las Vegas can be saved. The real question is it already too late? You see, the first cracks in the Las Vegas empire didn't appear in dramatic headlines or shocking scandals. They crept in silently, hidden within the very numbers that once defined the city's unstoppable success. By the middle of 2025, the official report from the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority showed just 19.66 million visitors so far that year. That's a staggering drop from the 42.5 million tourists who packed the Strip back in the glory days of 2019. And a drop like that isn't just a statistic. It's the very lifeblood of a city that literally lives and dies by its flow of tourists. Hotel occupancy, which used to hover comfortably above 90%, is now frequently dipping below 80%, leaving whole floors of mega resorts built for endless crowds completely deserted. Even on what should be the busiest weekends, when huge conventions or sporting events are supposed to bring in a flood of people, the number of available rooms remains alarmingly high. For a city where every empty bed is a direct hit to the bottom line, this is a 5-alarm fire. But the problem doesn't just stop with the hotels or the casinos. The very heart of Vegas feels like it's losing its rhythm. The regulars, the folks who once filled the blackjack tables or gathered around the roulette wheels, are now either spending far less or have just given up and stayed away. The turning point became painfully clear when the casinos introduced 000 roulette, stacking the odds so unfairly against the player it felt like a slap in the face. It was meant to be a sneaky way to boost profits. But instead, it ignited a firestorm of anger. For countless tourists, it was the final proof they needed that Vegas had stopped caring about giving anyone a fair shot. And then there are the buffets, for so long a glorious symbol of Vegas excess. Families used to boast about eating like kings for a steal, piling their plates high at Caesar's Palace's Bacchanal or the legendary Bellagio buffet. Today, thanks to soaring costs and fewer customers, those incredible spreads are either shutting down or jacking up prices so high that the average tourist has to just walk away. In a time when travelers demand value for their money, a $50 buffet ticket doesn't feel like a luxury anymore. It feels like a betrayal. And the hard truth is, people are finding better alternatives. The entire flow of global tourism has changed. Instead of flying to the middle of the Nevada desert, people are spending their vacation money at all-inclusive resorts in Mexico, or exploring the natural wonders of Canada. They're getting lost in the neon-drenched districts of Japan and soaking up history in the cultural centers of Europe. These places offer clear value without all the hidden fees that have given Vegas such a bad name. For so many Americans, even traveling within the country to places like Florida or Texas now feels more affordable and a whole lot less exhausting than a trip to the Strip. This is exactly why what's happening isn't just a temporary slump. The data reveals a long-term, devastating trend. Fewer tourists are coming, they're staying for shorter periods, and they're spending less money. Back in 2019, the average visitor to Vegas stayed for 3.4 nights. Now, that stay has shrunk to barely 2 nights. Spending for each visitor has also taken a nosedive. as tourists cut back on gambling and refused to pay for overpriced shows. When tourists change their behavior this radically, a city built entirely on their spending simply can't adapt fast enough. All the early warning signs, the empty rooms, the vanishing buffets, the quiet casinos, the shorter visits, they all point in one terrifying direction: a system that is already unraveling. And what makes this whole situation even worse is the denial. You still have casino executives on television reassuring their investors that the numbers are going to bounce back any day now. But for the workers and small businesses on the ground, the change is undeniable, and it's devastating. The Strip no longer feels invincible. And if Vegas can't hold on to its tourists, what's left? The very foundation that held up the entertainment capital of the world began to crack and fall apart. And while there were early warning signs, the real poison came from within, from the decisions made by the casino corporations themselves. What was once this incredible playground for the average American started twisting into a trap, one filled with hidden costs, terrible odds, and billion-dollar bets that completely backfired. Let's start with the infamous resort fee, because once upon a time, things were different. You see, a guest could book a room at the Bellagio or the MGM Grand, and the price they saw was the price they paid. But now, travelers get to the check-in desk only to find an extra $40 to $60 per night tacked onto their bill for amenities they might never even use. For the hotels, it was an easy way to print money, but for the guests, it felt like a betrayal, and they were absolutely furious. Social media exploded, with people complaining that Vegas was running a swindle on its own customers. That initial thrill of arrival quickly soured into pure resentment. And then came the parking fees. In a city that literally built its reputation on free parking as a welcome mat for every single visitor, the corporations did a complete 180. Now, charging $15 to $25 a day to park might not sound like a fortune, but for travelers trying to stick to a budget, it was just another insult. Instead of feeling welcomed, guests felt like they were being squeezed for every last penny. And then you step onto the casino floor itself. The moment they introduced 000 roulette, it was the breaking point for so many gamblers. By adding that one extra zero to the wheel, the house's advantage shot through the roof. For the average tourist, this wasn't just some mathematical change. It was a sign, clear as day, that Vegas didn't care if you had fun anymore, only that you lost your money faster. The regulars noticed, and a whole lot of them simply decided to stay home. But maybe the most colossal miscalculation of all came from these billion-dollar vanity projects. The executives shoveled unbelievable amounts of money into Formula One and the Sphere, convinced that the global hype would magically turn into long-term profit. The F1 Grand Prix, which they pushed with a $20 million sponsorship, just turned the Strip into a traffic apocalypse and completely alienated the locals. Tourists were complaining about hotel prices soaring over $1,000 a night, only to find themselves completely trapped in gridlock. Sure, the event made headlines, but for all the wrong reasons. Meanwhile, you have the Sphere, an absolutely breathtaking marvel of technology, which cost over $2.3 billion to construct. And yes, it looks absolutely stunning from the outside. And sure, the concerts inside are mind-blowing, but financially, it has been an absolute train wreck. The ticket sales and sponsorships don't even come close to covering that colossal debt. So instead of being a lifeline for the city, it's become a massive weight, forcing executives to double down on squeezing visitors in every other way imaginable. The strategy behind all these moves is painfully clear. The corporations were chasing short-term cash grabs at the expense of any long-term trust. They made a huge bet that tourists would just grit their teeth, swallow the fees, accept the worse odds, and keep coming back for the novelty. And for a while, it looked like that gamble was working. But here in 2025, the bill has finally come due. Visitors have choices, and they're choosing to go anywhere but Vegas. The irony is just agonizing. All this just to try and squeeze a few extra dollars out of people with resort fees, parking charges, and ridiculously overpriced buffets. For that, the casino operators may have shattered the loyalty of their customers forever. Middle-class Americans, who were once the absolute backbone of Vegas tourism, are now just shaking their heads and saying it's not worth it. As for the international high rollers, well, they're finding better value and, frankly, more respect in places like Macau, Singapore, and Monaco. The executives dreamed of turning Vegas into a luxury playground for the global elite. But they seem to forget that the Strip was built on the backs of everyday Americans who just wanted some affordable thrills. In their obsessive chase for billionaires, they lost the middle-class families who used to fill that city every single weekend. And by alienating the locals with traffic nightmares and an unbearable cost of living, they weakened the very community that kept the heart of Vegas beating between those big events. These weren't just simple mistakes, they were fatal errors. Choices that slammed the accelerator on the city's collapse by prioritizing flashy projects while bleeding their customers dry. The corporations didn't just gamble with the future of Vegas. In the end, they rigged the game against themselves. And when the casinos made these choices, it wasn't the executives who felt the pain first. It was the workers of Las Vegas. The very people who actually keep that city breathing. Behind every single glowing neon sign, behind every spinning slot machine, there are thousands of bartenders, dealers, housekeepers, cooks, and stagehands whose entire lives depend on a steady stream of tourists. And now those jobs are simply vanishing. Throughout 2024 and 2025, the industry reports began to confirm the grim reality. Thousands of workers on the Strip were either laid off or had their hours drastically cut. Some of the biggest names, resorts like MGM Resorts International and Caesars Entertainment, began to quietly let staff go, all to cut costs as their revenue started to nosedive. For the people on the ground, the change hit like a tidal wave. Suddenly, entire shifts were just gone. And for part-timers, the phone simply stopped ringing. A union rep laid it out in no uncertain terms, saying Vegas doesn't feel like the American dream anymore. For most of us, it's just about survival. And it's the hospitality workers who are feeling the brunt of this collapse. Think about the housekeepers who used to rely on those steady tips from tourists. Now they're walking through hallways of empty rooms with fewer and fewer guests to even clean for. It's the same story over at the blackjack and poker tables, where dealers are watching the crowds thin out, the bets get smaller, and the tips dry up. Restaurant servers are facing the same struggle, with diners ordering less and less. You see it everywhere. People skipping drinks, couples sharing a single meal. And for a city whose entire heartbeat depends on tips, watching that culture vanish is absolutely soul-crushing. And while all this is happening, the cost of just living in Clark County has gone through the roof. The median rent in Vegas shot up by nearly 30% in just 3 short years. To make matters worse, the number of foreclosures is on the rise again. A chilling echo of the 2008 housing crash that brought this city to its knees. Families who thought they had finally found stability are now boxing up their lives and leaving the valley for good. Because for them, what good are the bright lights of the Strip when you can't even afford to put food on the table? And this whole situation just pulls back the curtain on a deep, ugly hypocrisy. You have casino executives pocketing million-dollar bonuses, all while they're pushing cost-saving measures that slash the paychecks of their own workers. We're talking about the very people who scrub the floors, who deal the cards, and pour the drinks. They're being treated like they're completely expendable. But here's the thing, when those workers lose hope, the entire ecosystem of Vegas starts to crumble. And it isn't just the casino employees feeling this. The taxi drivers, the rideshare operators, the street performers, the small restaurant owners, even the show producers, every single one of them relies on the money that spills over from tourism. So when tourists tighten their belts, these are the people who feel it immediately. A taxi driver put it perfectly to a local paper saying, "I used to make 5 or 6 runs to the airport a night. Now," he said, "I'm lucky if I even get 3. That's the real story, a far cry from the glossy ads promising a city that never sleeps. And the human toll of this crisis, it's just heartbreaking. You've got families being torn apart, with breadwinners having to move out of state just to find work. Kids are being pulled out of their schools because their parents simply can't make rent anymore. You even have retirees, people who gave their lives to the casinos, now forced to go back to low-wage jobs just to keep their heads above water. The very city that once promised endless opportunity is now driving its own people to the brink of despair. And you know what the real irony is? The entire global reputation of Las Vegas was built on the backs of its workers. Think about it. Without the cocktail servers bringing you a drink with a smile, without the dealers who make every single hand of cards feel like a high-stakes thrill, without the performers who dazzled audiences night after night, the Strip would be nothing more than a stretch of concrete and blinking lights. But today, those very same people are being treated like they're disposable. And the result? A city that feels hollowed out, as if the very human spirit that once made it so magical has been completely drained away. This, right here, is the real fallout from the collapse of Vegas. It's not about numbers on a spreadsheet or a dip in tourism. It's about the systematic destruction of the very community that was the city's lifeblood. And the scary part is, once those workers are forced out, there might be no one left to pick up the pieces. But to really get what's happening in Las Vegas, you need to look bigger. You have to see it as more than just a city, it's a reflection of America itself. And what we're seeing in that reflection right now is deeply alarming. For decades, the experts have always said, if you want to see where the American economy is going, just look at the Strip. Well, right now, the Strip is flashing warning signs brighter than any of its famous neon signs. Let's start with how people are spending their money. See, when middle-class Americans are feeling good about their finances, they pour into Vegas. They hit the tables, they book the nice hotels, they splurge on those famous buffets and incredible shows. But the moment they start feeling squeezed by inflation, by the threat of layoffs, by soaring interest rates, that Vegas trip is one of the very first luxuries to get cut. And that is precisely what we're seeing in 2025. Across the US, credit card debt has soared past $1.3 trillion. More people are falling behind on their payments, and wages just aren't keeping pace with prices. So if someone can't justify a $300 a night hotel room in Nevada, how in the world are they supposed to afford their mortgage, their groceries, and their car payment back home? And this isn't just about tourism. The Las Vegas real estate market is another mirror for this national crisis. Here in Clark County, we're seeing foreclosures creep up again in a way that feels eerily similar to the 2008 housing market crash. Families that stretched every penny to buy a home during the pandemic boom are now facing the nightmare of losing it all as interest rates climb. The Strip might be glittering, but just a few miles away, you'll find neighborhoods haunted by for sale signs and boarded up windows. What's happening here is a terrifying preview of what could soon be hitting other cities all across America. And it also brings up a bigger question of identity. For that, you only need to look at Atlantic City as a grim cautionary tale. It was once sold as the Vegas of the East Coast, but it all came crashing down when the tourists stopped coming and the casinos started shutting their doors. Today, Atlantic City is just a ghost of what it once promised to be. You hear the locals whispering the question, "Are we next?" And when you look closer, the parallels are chillingly clear. A city hooked on gambling money, run by corporate greed, while its communities are left behind. It's a story we've all seen before, just playing out on a much bigger, brighter stage. The fall of Vegas is a mirror image of the slow decay of the American middle class, especially when you look back to the 1990s. Back then, a family could pile into the car from California, Arizona, or Utah, grab a cheap room, and have a whole weekend of fun that wouldn't drain their savings. But today, those very same families are locked out, staring at resort fees, parking charges, and $50 buffet tickets that feel like a slap in the face. A symbol of a country that's forgotten about the little guy. This isn't just about a vacation. The betrayal of the Vegas promise feels like the betrayal of the American dream itself. And this slipping grip is even showing up on the world stage. The global tourists who used to dream of Vegas are now booking flights to Cancun, Tokyo, or Barcelona. The international high rollers who once graced the VIP rooms now take their fortunes to Macau, a place where they say they're treated like kings, not targets. When a nation can't hold on to its own crown jewel of tourism, it tells you something much, much bigger is going on. It's a sign that America is losing its edge in the global marketplace. That old saying, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, it's dead. Now, what happens in Vegas is a warning that spreads like wildfire. The casino layoffs are a dark omen for other industries. The unstable housing market there reflects the same crisis happening nationwide. Those empty buffets and half-booked hotels are an echo of a national crisis in confidence. You see, Vegas is simply the most glamorous stage for a national tragedy that's unfolding across the entire United States. The symbolism is almost too perfect, isn't it? The entertainment capital of the world, a city literally built on illusion and belief, is crumbling for one simple reason. Americans have lost their belief in the economy, in their leaders, and in their own futures. And when that faith is gone, no amount of neon can light up the darkness. This is why Vegas is so important. This isn't just about some city in the desert. This is a test of whether the entire American system, a system built on endless spending and credit, can even survive. Because if Vegas can fall, then maybe the whole model America has been selling to the world is falling with it. By this point, it's painfully obvious that the issues plaguing Las Vegas aren't just a temporary slump. These are deep structural failures, and no flashy ad campaign or billion-dollar project is going to fix them. The gut-wrenching truth is that for Vegas, it's probably already too late. The first reason? A business model that's completely broken. For decades, the Strip's magic was built on a simple promise. Anyone could come here and feel like they had a shot. You had the cheap buffets, the free parking, and fair odds. Even though we all knew the house always won, you left feeling like you got a fair shake. But that's all gone. Today, the model feels like it's built on pure exploitation, with hidden resort fees and charges to park your car. They've introduced 000 roulette, they're charging $20 for a cocktail, and those $50 buffets have transformed a city of excitement into a city of resentment. And once you shatter that trust, well, it's nearly impossible to ever get it back. The second devastating blow is the disappearance of international visitors. Before the pandemic, the Strip was alive with Chinese high rollers, European vacationers, and families from Canada. Fast forward to 2025, and those same travelers are taking their money to Macau, Singapore, Cancun, or Tokyo instead. The global stage is fiercely competitive now, and Vegas no longer has the monopoly on spectacle. Tourists have figured out they can find the same dazzling experience somewhere else. And often, it's cheaper and doesn't come with a laundry list of hidden fees. That leads to the third reason: the utter collapse of loyalty at home. The American middle class, the very backbone of Vegas tourism for generations, has been completely priced out. With credit card debt soaring to record highs and wages refusing to budge, the average American family just can't rationalize dropping thousands of dollars on a weekend trip to Vegas. When families from just next door in California or Arizona start saying it's just not worth it anymore, you haven't just lost a customer, you've lost an entire generation. And once families stop making those traditional trips to Vegas, that tradition dies forever. And the fourth reason is this completely unsustainable illusion of luxury. Vegas desperately tried to rebrand itself as this exclusive high-end playground, pouring money into billion-dollar stadiums, lavish suites, and massive productions. But the numbers just don't add up. You have cities like Dubai and Singapore and Macau that already own that market. Vegas can't out-luxury the rest of the world. Not when its own foundations, its housing, its transportation, the stability of its workforce are crumbling from within. The fantasy of endless glamour completely shatters the moment a guest steps off the Strip and sees the reality of homeless encampments just a few blocks away. Even the so-called rescue plans they're floating sound hollow. Talking about expanding convention business or building more stadiums isn't going to fix the disease at the core of the city. These are just band-aids on a system that's already bleeding out. The city's reliance on squeezing every last dollar from fewer and fewer people, that's not a strategy. It's a downward spiral. It's like they're doubling down on a losing hand, just praying for a miracle. But this time, in Vegas, the house itself has stacked the odds against its own survival. And then there's the final and perhaps most devastating reason of all. The city has lost its soul. You see, what made Vegas legendary wasn't just the spectacle of lights and casinos. It was the promise that any ordinary person could come here and live out a fantasy, just for a weekend. That feeling, that very magic, has been systematically dismantled by cold, hard corporate greed. You can always build bigger hotels, add flashier rides, or book more famous performers. But you can never, ever rebuild trust once it has been shattered. And trust is the one currency Vegas truly can't afford to lose. That's why so many economists, frontline workers, and even visitors who've been coming for years are all quietly admitting the same thing. The collapse isn't on the horizon. It's already here. You see it in the empty rooms, the shorter trips, the ghost of the all-you-can-eat buffets, the pain of the laid-off workers, the sight of families fleeing as businesses board up their windows. All of it is proof that Vegas isn't just in a slump, it's in a free fall, happening in slow motion, and nobody seems to be able to pull the brakes. When historians of the future look back on this time, they won't be asking, why did Las Vegas collapse? They're going to ask, why didn't anyone sound the alarm sooner? In the end, the story of Las Vegas is the story of a magnificent dream that simply outlived its era. For decades, the entertainment capital of the world made a promise that you could come here and escape reality, even if it was just for a few days. But today, those brilliant neon signs do little more than hide a painful truth. A city built on illusion simply cannot survive once the illusion fades away. Take a walk down the Las Vegas Strip at night, and yes, you'll still see the iconic marquees of Caesar's Palace and the beautiful dancing fountains at the Bellagio. You'll even see that towering sphere lighting up the desert sky. But if you stop and listen, really listen, you'll hear the silence. The sound of fewer tourists, of emptier casino floors, of workers without work, and of families leaving the valley because they just can't afford to call it home anymore. Vegas was once the ultimate symbol of the American dream, a place where it didn't matter who you were, you could feel like a winner. Now, it's become a warning, a cautionary tale about greed, about the danger of short-term thinking, and about what happens when a system starts valuing profits far more than people. The fall of Las Vegas isn't just about one city in the desert. It's a story about what happens when the very foundations of trust and fairness are broken beyond any hope of repair. And if it can happen here, in a city that once felt completely unstoppable, it raises a much darker question. What part of America is next? So why can't anyone stop the collapse of Vegas? Because by the time anyone was willing to admit there was a serious problem, it was already too late. So now I have to turn the question over to you. Do you believe Las Vegas can ever make a comeback? Or are we watching the final chapter of its story unfold? Let us know what you think in the comments below. And please, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden truths that America doesn't always want to face.